revelation that's disconnected from human life has never interested me. It's always seemed like, what's the point? Like, so you have a nice experience and then you're a jerk the next minute. Like, what's the point? What's the meaning of something like that? And that's part of the fun of it, you know? After you get over the angst of it all, it's an amazing adventure, you know, for all of us, for all of you, it can be. Whatever your insight is, and you know, some of you have had deep experience or deep insight, some of you don't think you have, but everybody in this room has had certain insights in their life, certain little moments of understanding, just a little bit deeper understanding than you had the day before. We all have had our own deeper understandings, our own moments of insight, whether they're small or great. And one of the great adventures of a lifetime, because it's an adventure without end, without limit, without finish line, is the great adventure of, number one, translating our deepest experience of being down into human terms. That's important. Not that we always do that, because it's beyond human terms. Spiritual revelation is certainly beyond human terms, but it's important that we also translate it down into human terms, and that there's this sort of adventure of how fully and how clearly can you live that out in your humanity, right? Because it's no guarantee that any of us will. Right? And so, at some point, that seems like a burden, you know, because you've experienced this big gap between what you realized and who you are as a human being. It's always like, good Lord. You know? Like last week, I was meditating in my room, and gee, I just seemed like a Buddha, and then, you know, I walked out of the room, and my kids wanted me to, whatever they wanted you to do, or whatever, you know, and it's like the Buddha just broke into a million pieces, and you're there sort of humbled yet again for the 10,000th time in the last week. And there's a point, you know, where noticing that is sort of, you know, filled with angst and often a fair amount of judgment and some shame sprinkled in, and all these sort of toxic human emotions and interpretations. But maybe after a little while you realize, like, that's not necessary. That just isn't necessary. Like, you still are a human being too. And you just stop, like, projecting perfection onto that human being, or thinking that it should be just have every single bit of its act together and should be just a perfect expression of your own deepest insights. And you just sort of get off of yourself and relax a little bit, and you realize this is an adventure. This is like this is an exploration. Like, how deep can I take this? How embodied can I become? And you're not then angst-ridden about the big gap. You've accepted the damn gap, right? You're like, okay, so there's a gap between what I've realized in my better moments and who I am as a human being in my worst moments, for sure. But you realize, like, you can judge that and feel terrible about that, or you can get on with the business of, wow, I wonder how close these two can come. Right? Of course, the deeper levels of insight and realization show us that the human and the timeless are the same. But they're not just the same. They're the same and they're different. Like heads and tails of a coin. You know, the human mind always jumps between opposites, right? It's this way or it's that way. It's Reality seems to always come in these sort of nice paradoxes, right? Realization shows us that we are both the one in the sense of big O, the one, and we are also the one in terms of a little o, a particular incarnate human being. It's not that we go from one to the other, exclusively from the human to exclusively the timeless. That's it's a nice dream, but it doesn't go. We get the whole package. We get the big one and the small one, and we get the adventure of the humanity growing into its true nature forever, because there's no limit. Doesn't seem to be a limit. To some people, when I say that, I can see a disappointment in their face. They're like, oh. It never ends, you know? From the human perspective. Then it just becomes an exploration. How deeply can I live out my own deepest knowings? How deeply can I do that? And what gets in my way? And am I ready to let go of what's in my way? Am I ready to see through it or work it out or do whatever I have to do so that it starts to give more space to my true nature?